Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to the Econobox garage. The goal for this week is to get the bulk of the wiring harness all finished up and get the air horns installed. Thanks for joining me. I hope you enjoy this week's video. Well, I've been working on a solution for running the wiring harness from the front flip bonnet. So what I've decided to do, so I'll have a P-clip here, and I've already put a P-clip in here, and while I'm talking about wiring, I'm going to put a horn relay up here, because I'm going to put air horns on the car. So that's just sitting there. These are the horn wires here, and I'll just wire up this relay in the correct way. And I'm going to mount the horns up in here, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So from this P-clip here, I will just run the two harnesses side by side along here, and there'll be P-clips mounted for those in this spot and in this spot. Now I'm going to have to pick a larger one up because the only ones I have left are not going to be big enough. Then once the harness from the front gets up here, I'll just zip tie it to the main harness as it comes through here, underneath that tab here, and that gives me lots of room to plug all of these from the front harness into the appropriate plugs in here. As I mentioned in an earlier video, I will have to change these to a spade connector to connect to the bottom of the signal light flasher. There is a P-clip here that was original. That just secures the main harness in place. All of these wires go to the regulator. All of these ones here go to the fuse block, and I've just got to pick up some fuses for that. We come further down. This is the harness coming across from the dimmer switch. So that goes into there. These two little green wires are for the brake lights. They go into the switch here. On this bit of the harness goes to the distributor, generator, and coil. So once I've got all of this into place, then I will get the distributor installed and the generator. Yeah, I've got the wiring harness routed on the right hand side. Got some zip ties in here that I've got to clip off, and then the double P-clips. Actually, I discovered that the P-clips I had would work in this for this part here. So that's good to go for that. And so next up, I still need to drill a hole down here for a P-clip to hold that. And then I have the plastic sheathing to go over that stretch of wire well, I'll probably take it right from that plug down there all the way up to this P-clip. So there we are, one step closer to finishing off the electric. Well, the goal for this next step is to finish off all the connections on the wiring on this side of the car. So there's the plug from the front harness, the wires for the signal light flasher unit, the wires that go into the fuse box here, and the ones that go into the regulator. And then once the distributor and generator are in, I can hook these ones up. I'm going to finalize my routing and hookup for the harness from the front, and then figure out where I'm going to mount the air horns. I figured out where I'm going to mount the relay, and that's right here. So I'm definitely making some progress. I've got the flasher wired up, the two harnesses connected together. I've got the fuse box wired up, and I also have the regulator wired up. The brake light switch wired up, the harness secured going up to the front. So I'm just going to go down in this area here now and finish off what I need to do there. So I'm going to run a line directly from the battery, positive, to the relay over here for the horns. Well, there I have the P-clip mounted to the air intake here. I have the plastic sheathing on the wire as it goes up to another P-clip in behind here. That, and I'll show you a picture of this with it closed. Well, I could see when I had the bonnet down that this P-clip was getting a bit close to here. So I'll turn it around so it's at this side. Well, that looks much better. You can see I just moved the P-clip, turned it around 180 degrees, and I'm not worried about the horn wire just the moment, but I think this is in a good spot here. I don't think that'll be interfering with the tires at all, so quite happy with how that one's turned out. One of the goals with this project is to do it in such a manner that if someone in the future wants to go back to original, there won't be an awful lot of work to do. So to that end, in wiring up the relay for the air horns I'm putting in, I've made little jumper cables to go from the bullet connector to the spade connector. I'll connect these little jumpers to the end of the existing harness and then connect the jumper to the relay. That way I'm not cutting the horn wires and leaving the connectors in place, so that in the future it can go back to a standard horn with standard connections and what have you without having to do any repairs on the new harness. Well, here's the horn setup, all installed. As a compressor, the horns themselves, I made a bracket to attach the horns to the side here, and I just used rivnuts here for that. And the compressor had a nut and bolt setup already, so I just drilled a hole for that. Now I did change the wiring a little bit from what I initially showed you. Instead of running the power all the way to the horn, I've run the power to the relay in here. It's switched by the horn button. And then I've run the ground wire, the negative wire from the compressor, back through the harness to a grounding spot right here. And all I did for this, I replaced the bolt that was originally holding this bracket to the wheel housing with a longer one, so I could thread on another nut and run the ground. That way I know that the pump is definitely grounded to the car itself. Just thought I'd show you how the relay is set up. So I'm using a 4-terminal relay, and they are numbered 30, 87, 86, and 85. So how I've got it hooked up is the brown with green wire and the brown with black wire are the original wires in the harness, and they're actually hooked up to those little jumpers that I showed you a bit earlier, so that when the horn button gets pushed, it activates this part of the relay here, which is a little electromagnet, which in turn closes the switch inside the relay. So this line will come directly from the battery through the switch in the relay over to the new horn compressor, and then the ground wire is the one that I showed you comes back through the harness and bolts to the inside of the fender. The idea with using a relay is it takes the load for the horn itself out of the main wiring harness. I am going to switch the relay I have in there for a fused one, so this will be a fused circuit. So there is basically how the relay works in this situation. So next up I'm going to be getting the distributor ready, generator ready, and the coil, and that'll be the last little bit of the wiring to go. Well, that's a wrap for this episode. I'm quite pleased with the progress, and in the next episode I'll be getting the generator installed along with the distributor. I'd just like to say thanks to everyone who's subscribed, who's liked the videos, who's left comments below, and who've picked up merchandise. I really appreciate the support. If you haven't already done so, be sure to hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, and don't forget that little bell icon. Click on that, you'll get notified when the next video comes out. My name is Ian. This is the Econobox Garage. We'll see you next time.